The next item on our agenda is a presentation of our 2023 survey results. Mayor Kleiss.
Thank you, Council President Gerger and members. I'm just going to, as you can see on the screen, this is the 2023 survey, and as I think I mentioned when we had the budget presentation, so for those who don't know, hopefully everyone knows, hopefully they received one. We mailed them out to every household in the city of St. Cloud. We've done this a few years. Just to give you a little bit about it, we did this in 2012 and 17 and 19. We had planned on doing it in 21, but COVID hit in 2020. It was, I think everybody kind of has a couple of years of asterisk in their budgets or whatever else, and it just didn't seem like the right time to go out and do a survey. So we didn't do one in 21, but we wanted to do it, particularly get it back on track to try to do this every 2 years. As far as the survey goes, funding-wise, I think people, because we do mail it, so there is a cost to it. We're fortunate to be able to receive a grant from the state of Minnesota, and we don't get that every year, so we do spread it out those 2 years. It gives us an opportunity to use that grant to mail it out. We started this, like I said, in 2012 through a collaboration with St. Cloud State University. In fact, we developed the questions with the survey department there. They're nationally known. They've done really good surveys. In fact, I think they were the only survey, if you go back, for those of you who've been here a while, that predicted Jesse Ventura would become governor. I think it was the only survey that had that prediction at that time. So they're pretty good at what they do, and they helped us develop the questions. A lot of questions, and they're the same questions we've used every year. We really haven't changed the questions. We've tweaked a little bit. I think we've dropped most of the demographic questions in this previous survey, but we still ask some. It's just they're voluntary, and one of the challenges we have is when you have a voluntary part of it, especially with demographic questions, you don't always get it. So it's really hard to actually do what a good survey would do is weight those results. So unfortunately, we don't have a lot of that, but we will break that down east, west, north, south, so you get a little better idea what wards, because we did try to break it down by wards. But even when we did that, I think everybody knew whether they lived east or west of the river, but not everybody knew they lived north or south of Highway 23 or Division. So, but we did get a really good response rate, as you can see here, 15% plus, which for a survey, any type of survey, especially the mailed out survey, that is a very good response rate. And for any type of standards, that's high. In fact, if you look at that, over 4,800 people responded to that survey. Just to put that in a little bit of content, over 4,800 people responded to that survey. We just had an election for the ward candidates last time around, and in that general election, nobody won those races with 4,800 or more votes. So it's actually more people participate in the survey than actually won those seats. If you actually go back to you at-large folks, nobody received that many votes in the at-large primary. Now, of course, in the general election in a presidential year, there's a larger turnout, and it's at-large, so it's citywide. And wards are separated into wards. So I'm just giving that for reference when it comes to even the primary for a general election for the entire city. That not that many people voted in that council race. So for the victorious folks, I should say. There are people that voted in the race in general. But the issue is that that's a pretty significant response rate, and it shows that people are concerned and they care, which is important, and that's why we do it. Not all cities. I do not know of any city that does a mail ballot or a mail a survey like this. In fact, we can't find many. A lot of cities will put something on their website, not scientific in any way, because anybody can participate. We allowed this to be web-based also, because we did put a QR code right on the survey, so you could do that, and a lot of people utilize that, or they did it online. But I want to give you the results. I shared some of the results when I did the budget to kind of look at those top issues in some of the survey, but I'm going to go through each question now so you get a better indication. And this information will also be on our website. Also, in fact, it's on there now. If you went to the website, you could find all the same information that I'm presenting today. Okay, so and I'm going to go, and this isn't from the first question all the way to the end, but every question will be covered. I just wanted to start with this overall question. So this, if you remember on the survey there, I think on that last page, it went through a whole bunch of things, and you could put all the way from, you rate each one of those issues. Overall safety. So these are the overall questions. Overall safety in St. Cloud, 71%. 71% is a high. I said anything over 70% or anything sometimes over 60% or 65% is high. Overall appearance of the city, 88%, which again is extremely high when you look at the overall appearance of the city. Is St. Cloud a friendly community? We asked that question specifically separate from those other questions, and we started this. This wasn't done the first year we did it. I think all of the subsequent surveys, because we wanted to just know, are we a friendly, welcoming community? That was the question or debate a few years back, and so we wanted to ask the question, so we did. And that came out 85%. 85% agree of people who live in St. Cloud, which is again high on those percentage pieces. What do you like best about St. Cloud? And if you recall on this, we asked the question. We had 20-some different opportunities, pretty much over the years, developing, especially this with the university. What would be, if you leave it open-ended, it's a challenge, so we put down and you circle. So, but pretty much anything you could think of, whether it's, all types of assets, what would it be? The number one was, it has all I need. This has been the number one in all the surveys we've done. And also when I talk about I'm going to, if something is really off whack, I will say, but for the most part, what I just gave you on the previous page is similar to those other years also. There's not a lot of deviation. That, if you look at those years, they're pretty similar in those pieces. There's one area, and I'll share a little later, that changes a little bit. All I need. Family is here, medical services, parks, trails, and recreation. Those are the top four. What would you like most about St. Cloud? And again, we asked in this question, just pick one. So you look at what somebody picks as their top issue, and this is how they rank, and they come out in those top four. We asked specifically to your neighborhood. What do you like best about your neighborhood? And then what do you like least about your neighborhood? Those are two questions. If you see in that small print on the bottom, and don't ask me to read that, because my arms aren't, in fact, it's on the screen, it's a little tougher. I didn't bring my cheaters up here. But those were basically all the options. And I put that on there so you can see there are a lot of options, both in what you like and what you dislike. You pretty much ran the gamut. There's 25 different possible responses. And then we also have the response other. And anytime we've done this survey, if something rose to a real high number in the other, it would then become a response. We haven't had anything that's done that, because usually if it's other and you can't come up with anything else, if a lot of people say something, well, then it should probably be one of the choices on there. But other run the gamut. One in particular I saw that, they put other, and sometimes they put other without putting anything, or they'll put other and then they'll name one of their neighbors as one of the best or one of the worst things in their neighborhood, but they give that. But we even asked the question, I think, what is the worst thing you like about your neighborhood? One of those is meddling neighbors. So I think we had enough others in the past to put that piece in there. But what people like most about their neighborhood is quiet. And I think this has come out also every year as the number one. They like their neighborhood because it's quiet. And so quiet, friendly neighbors, number two. It's safe, low crime, number three. Four, helpful neighbors. So there's a connection with the neighbors, which is good. That's in the top four. Both of those are a connection with the neighbors, quiet and safe. And then if you go to what they like least, this is an interesting thing too, because this doesn't happen in many surveys, but when you list a whole bunch of things and you pretty much have everything you could think of that you wouldn't like about a neighborhood, and if you can't answer them, what comes out number one? Don't know. Don't know was the number one. And don't know has come out number one, I think, in each of the surveys also. So there's nothing that sticks out. But we asked to circle at least one thing. Don't know. And then traffic. And this is interesting, too. It says safety and crime. But it's the third top thing for what you like about the neighborhood, and it's the third thing that you have a concern with. So again, when you're asking somebody to answer a question, the don't know also is something you don't normally, when you're filling out a survey, it's hard for me to write don't know unless I have no idea, but I live in my neighborhood, so there should be something, either other or something. But in this case, it's traffic, safety, and then homes and yards not maintained. And that oftentimes is in that top 5 in there too. So that's an important thing. But these are signals to us on what you least like, because this is what we focus on. Okay, if it's a safety issue, then safety in neighborhoods is an important thing. That's where, especially in neighborhoods, where we need to focus more and more on those neighborhood watches, that neighborhood connectivity, things we can do in a neighborhood for people to feel safer or to understand or to have a better connection with each other for safety. And the same with maintained homes. That's the whole purpose of why we went through that whole process of the best practices, why we went through. And I'm going to talk a little bit, because there's another piece of the survey that really highlights the need to do that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about an action item and one of those people, or at least a proposal coming forward that we talked a little bit earlier this year with, and I'll remind council members of that from the previous retreat we had at the beginning of the year. And that's this section right here. We asked a number of questions that are specifically, if you recall from the survey, about, have you attended a neighborhood meeting in the last year? Have you attended a neighborhood social activity in the last year? How do you feel informed? Well, have you attended a neighborhood meeting? 82% said no. Now, depending if there were no meetings, I mean, the fact that there's even 18% of folks that had some type of meeting, but not a meeting. Again, that's the piece. Now, some of the more established neighborhoods, if we actually probably broke that down by block, we could probably say where some of those meetings were. And I would hope that folks think that the National Night Out isn't necessarily a meeting, but it's a social gathering. That probably could fit under the second one. Have you attended a neighborhood social activity in the previous year? Again, vast majority no, 67%, 33% yes. Are you informed about are you informed about a neighborhood organizations? Majority yes, which is good. Well, most people are at least informed, but not necessarily. There aren't events or they're not attending them. But again, still not a great number. But the last question is probably more revealing about a neighborhood. Probably goes back to the reason most people say don't like about things that they don't like about their neighborhood is because, is your neighborhood a good place to live? 90% say yes. 90%, which is again is a very strong number. But the first 3, and going back to that previous slide when I talked about that neighborhood connectivity, homes maintained, we talked about this earlier this year, and we've been working since. I mean, we had this discussion, I think, council at a retreat in January of this year, earlier this year, and we talked a little bit about that whole neighborhood connectivity, and we looked at, for those who have been around here for a while, we went through a whole process where we did healthy neighborhoods, where we looked at core neighborhoods, but we focused on core neighborhoods, those older established neighborhoods in the core of the city. But we talked about bringing that back, but this is all neighborhoods, whether it's a neighborhood, and your neighborhood could just be an apartment building you live in, that's a neighborhood. It could be a condominium, condo association, could be a traditional neighborhood. But we're working with the Initiative Foundation. We've had conversations. Next year we want to bring back exactly, but in a broader perspective, all the neighborhoods and go through that process of visioning, and that, as you recall, those of you who spent a lot of time on that led to the best practices, it led to a lot of ordinance changes, it dealt with a lot of those homes. When we see that as one of the concerns, it's number 4, but it's a concern. We do these surveys so not just to get a customer satisfaction, do top issues. We also look, where can we do some improvement? That's why businesses do surveys. That's why we do survey. We want to be able to have action based on what people are telling us are either concerns or things that we should work on. This tells me, because I can tell you, when it comes to public safety, and every statistic, every study, every survey, our public safety folks will tell you, it's neighborhood connectivity is what helps with public safety. It's neighborhood connectivity, which will give people a feeling of safety. If they know their neighbors and there's some issue, you look out for each other, those types of things, the neighborhood watches, those types of things. So the fact that there's not as much of that connectivity, we can help facilitate that connect. We can't force people to connect, but we can help facilitate the connectivity, and that's really what this tells us we need to do. It's nice to see that they're good places to live, but we want to make them better, and we want to create better connectivity. People in my neighborhood have, and this is also important because this is a high number. So when we talk about trying to set up something through the Initiative Foundation to try to engage people, if people don't think that their engagement's going to lead to anything, it's hard to engage people. We went through that whole when we went through the healthy neighborhoods, we went through those core neighborhoods, people were engaged because in fact, the more they saw action taken, the more they became more engaged. But the connectivity, you ask the question, people in my neighborhood have opportunities to meet and work on solving neighborhood problems. 68% people agree with that. They feel they do. So there's a willingness to try to connect. We just need to bring people together and help facilitate that to work on some of those issues, whether it's public safety or whether it's homes maintaining or just that connectivity. We asked that, and then I'm going to go through a series of questions where we asked about, and maybe the wording sometimes on this, because we asked, have you contacted an elected official or city staff member regarding a neighborhood or community issue? Now, this is an interesting thing because it's 20% yes. Now, we didn't break it down. That's probably in the future we might want to break that down from elected official to whether they call the department or staff, because I've seen a lot of statistics nationally when they ask, have you contacted an elected official? That number is usually less than 1%. So to have 20%, you have a more engaged community than I've seen but that's usually an elected official. When you send an email or you make a phone call, that's a small number when you look at the general population of the area, and it's usually a small percentage. And the higher the office that you are at, if you're talking state, the less that percentage is. But locally, usually have more connection, especially and we've put a lot of intentional engagement in the community. And I think having a 20% maybe shows that we engage a lot more. So there's a contact. We try to create that contact through meetings that we have, through neighborhood meetings, through the St. Cloud 101, for the town halls, those types of things. We try to create the engagement. So 20%, even though it seems low, that's 20% of folks that are connected in a community, which in almost any other national survey I've seen is high. And then we asked the question of that engagement, was it positive or negative? 74% felt that was a positive engagement. That's good. 74% is a strong number when it comes to actually having those connections. And oftentimes, as you well know, sometimes you'll get a contact when something is a barking dog or somebody hasn't picked up the garbage or there's some issue. So if you can end that conversation or the resolution with that, and it's not always going to be a resolution that's positive, but if you can do that, that's a good percentage going forward. But as in all of these things, improvement, always. You want to try to get to that 100% piece. Here's a little, I'll jump back to, because we asked the question too on satisfaction when it comes to public safety, and I'll talk a little bit about, but I'm going to just lead here in this next slide with public safety. Now, we do this question every year also, and I got to go back and look at some of the benchmarks, but I think for the most part, these are very similar also. But do you feel safe walking alone? And this is one of the things too, and maybe it's the terminology that we use too, walking alone, and for some people that may be an unsafe thing just in itself, but these numbers we use the same question 3 different times of the day. Downtown, 57%. Majority feel safe, which is good, but not as high as we would like it. So that's the issue of the issue of safety. We've talked about this many times. St. Cloud downtown is one of the safest areas in the city by all measures of our St. Cloud. As far as where that beat is, it's one of the safest beats in the city. But if people don't feel that, that's why the focus on downtown has been a big focus for us, on not only the statistics, but also the fear. Fear of crime is just as bad as the actual reality of it, because we want people to feel safe. So we will continue to focus this. That's one of our top priorities. 57% in the downtown area, but it's still a majority. Do you feel safe walking alone in your neighborhood during the day? 93%. That's high, obviously, and people feel safe in their neighborhoods. It's listed in, earlier in that question. 93%, which is a high percentage. Do you feel safe? The third one is, do you feel safe walking alone in your neighborhood in the dark? And again, maybe the use of the words. I can tell you some folks, I could say, do you feel walking alone in your house in the dark? And would probably not always be a positive number. But 62% agree. So if you're looking at that walking alone and you're looking at that, it's an area that it's still of a concern. If people aren't at 90% plus in almost any time, we have an issue that we need to focus on. We need to make sure that people feel safe, whether it's at night, whether it's during the day, whether it's walking alone, or whether it's downtown. That's an issue. These are all majority, which is good, but there's an area that we need to focus on, and we do. That's why we prioritize public safety as our top issue. That's why we have a community engagement division in public safety, and that's why we're focusing on the whole issue of downtown to work on the issue of increasing and enhancing the safety and increasing and enhancing the livability and the vitality. Now, this is also the piece, too, when you look at crime statistics. Always interesting. Have you been, we used to ask this, are you, a victim of? We took that piece off because that's a little, we have all those statistics. But we did, if you did, in the last year, have you contacted the St. Cloud Police Department? Vast majority said no. 73%. Look at that number. 73% have not had any contact with the police department in the last year. But of that 27% that did, what was the rating? 92%. So those who did have contact or made those calls, very high percentage. 92% was one of the highest and it mirrors the overall satisfaction of all services, but 92%. Have you had contact with the St. Cloud Fire Department? In that case, 89% said no, so you're looking at 11% that have, and of that 11%, 84% had a positive contact. Again, these are very strong numbers, and once you did, but also show there hasn't been a lot of contact. So when you look at the overall calls for service and those types of things, you can go back and actually look and see if does that match where the numbers of report the percentages. And that's something in the past we've looked at, and we can do that again with this, looking at the actual statistics and does it match up? Because sometimes I'll have people say, well, it doesn't match people don't always report it. Well, then here you have a situation. We used to ask the question, have you been a victim? And were you a victim, did you report it? Was not helpful when we've done that in the course. We didn't use that. This time we just used the satisfaction.